You never get bored. Maybe that's the problem. When was the last time you were bored? Not the kind where you were bored while looking at your phone. I mean, really bored. You were sitting somewhere, nothing was happening, and there was simply nothing to distract you. Today, that almost seems impossible. A wait of just a few seconds is enough to reach for your phone. A bus ride is already too long to simply look out the window. And a quiet evening almost automatically ends with a screen. There is always something to keep you occupied, a video, a message, another piece of news, a podcast, a page you can scroll forever. And while all of this is happening, we may not even notice that something has disappeared from our lives. Those moments when nothing is simply happening. At first, this doesn't seem like a great loss. After all, who likes being bored? Boredom is uncomfortable, slow, empty. It's a feeling we instinctively want to escape. But what if that feeling is actually important? What if those few minutes we immediately fill with something are actually one of the last places where we can encounter our own thoughts? Because when there is nothing to distract us, our minds begin to wander somewhere else. And that's when things can surface that we simply don't have time for during the rest of the day. An idea, an old memory, an unresolved problem, or even a question we've been trying to avoid for a long time. And perhaps that's why it's so interesting that while technology has almost completely eliminated boredom, more and more people feel like they don't have enough time to think. Maybe the problem isn't that we used to be bored too much. Maybe it's that we don't know how to be bored anymore. And that could be far more significant than we initially realize. Because boredom doesn't simply mean that we have nothing to do. When we're bored, the external stimulus that constantly tells us what to pay attention to disappears. And today, that state is becoming increasingly rare. Think about how many things compete for your attention in a single day. You wake up in the morning and the notifications are already there. You check what happened overnight. Then you head to work or school, listening to something along the way. If you have to wait, you take out your phone. If you have 5 minutes, you watch something. If you have 20 minutes, you watch something else. And in the evening, when there's finally a little silence, we fill it with something again, as if we were constantly afraid that even a single empty minute might be wasted time. But empty time isn't necessarily wasted time. In fact, it might be precisely during these minutes that we begin thinking about things we would otherwise never have time to think about. There is an interesting consequence to this. When we are constantly receiving new and newer stimuli, we don't have to decide what to think about. Someone else has already decided for us. The video we started, the next post, the next piece of news, the next notification, the next recommended piece of content, and we simply follow along. That isn't necessarily a problem by itself. The problem begins when we can no longer tolerate the state in which no one and nothing tells us what to focus on. Try it sometime. Sit down for 10 minutes with no phone, television, music, or any other form of entertainment in front of you. Just sit. The first few minutes will probably feel surprisingly long, and you'll probably soon find yourself thinking about checking your phone. Maybe just for a second, just to see what time it is. And suddenly, you'll find yourself in a completely different app. That's interesting because the phone doesn't just give us information, it also offers an instant escape from boredom, and it always works, at least in the short term. But in the process, we lose something. The opportunity to experience what happens when there is nothing filling the silence inside our heads. And perhaps this is where the really interesting part of the story begins. Because our brains don't shut down just because there is no screen in front of us. Quite the opposite. When we don't have to focus on a specific task, the brain enters a different mode of operation. Researchers call this the default mode network. The name sounds much more complicated than the phenomenon itself. Essentially, when we don't have a specific task to do, our minds begin to wander freely. And that's when something can happen that we increasingly rarely allow ourselves to experience while constantly using screens. We start thinking about ourselves, not about what is happening in the world, but about what is happening inside us. And that is exactly why boredom can be much more uncomfortable than it first appears. Because when there is nothing occupying our attention, pleasant thoughts don't necessarily appear. We might remember a decision we regret, a relationship where something isn't right, a job we haven't liked for a long time, a goal we set years ago but somehow never managed to reach, or simply the question we spend the entire day trying to avoid: am I really living the life I want to live? There is no answer to these questions available with a single tap. And that is precisely why it's so much easier to open our phones. A new video can eliminate the silence within seconds. A new message gives us something to respond to. Another piece of news gives us a new topic to think about. And before we realize it, 10, 20, or 30 minutes have passed. The uncomfortable thought is gone, at least for a while. But this can create a strange cycle. You're bored, you take out your phone, the phone distracts you. Eventually, there's nothing to do again. You're bored again. You take out your phone again. And the more often this happens, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it doesn't even feel like a decision anymore. It just happens. Waiting for something? Phone. Alone? Phone. Don't feel like doing something? Phone. A little stressed? Phone. Can't fall asleep? Phone. And slowly we create a world where almost every uncomfortable or empty moment has an instant cure. But something else disappears along with it. Patience, deep focus, and perhaps even the ability to simply spend a longer period of time with a single thought. That matters because our most interesting thoughts rarely appear immediately. They often need time, during a walk, on a long journey, in the shower, while driving, or precisely when we are doing nothing. It's no coincidence that so many ideas come to us when we finally stop trying to come up with ideas. The brain can connect things that previously seemed unrelated, an old memory with a new problem, a past experience with a future plan. A simple thought with something we've been trying to decide for months, and from that, a new idea can emerge. An insight, or simply a clearer picture of what we actually want. Of course, this doesn't mean that every screen is bad, or that phones are ruining our lives. That's not the point. Phones are now part of our work, our relationships, and our everyday lives. The problem is more about what happens when we no longer have a choice. When we automatically fill every empty moment. Because maybe the question isn't how much time we spend on our phones. Maybe the question is whether we still have any time left when nothing is trying to capture our attention. Perhaps that's why we should rethink what it really means to be bored. Boredom may not be wasted time. It might actually be the time when we finally don't have to perform, respond, pay attention, or consume. We don't have to answer a message. We don't have to watch a new video. We don't have to know what happened in the world during the last 5 minutes. We can simply be there. And perhaps, strangely enough, it may be during these quiet minutes that we finally begin to think about what we want, where we're going, what matters to us, and what we might need to change. So next time you're waiting somewhere, try not reaching for your phone. Don't start anything. Don't try to eliminate the boredom immediately. Just let it be there. The first few minutes might be uncomfortable, but maybe something interesting happens after that. A thought that has been inside you for a long time finally rises to the surface. A problem you finally find a solution to. Or you simply realize something about yourself. Because in a world where people are trying to occupy every second of our time, where YouTube and endless scrolling always offer another video, another piece of content, another just watch this moment, perhaps one of the greatest luxuries is no longer having more entertainment. It's having a few minutes when nothing happens. And sometimes that means consciously stepping away from all of this. Not letting the next video start automatically. Not letting the next recommendation carry us forward. But simply deciding for ourselves that, for now, enough is enough. So next time you catch yourself thinking, just one more video, put the phone down. Turn it off, look up, and let the silence finally have a little space in your life.